Ask a few questions, and we'll take some of those questions, or at least one of them, towards the end of the session. But very, very excited, one and all. U90 Nation, we have none other than Mr. Bryce Cooper on the call. Bryce is the head coach of Newberry College down in South Carolina. Part of the very competitive South Atlantic Conference. We'll talk about the SAC during this call. We're going to cover three key topics on the call today. And three of the topics that really came to mind that I wanted to engage coach in was firstly around the current recruiting situation, some of the limitations you might be facing there at Newberry, how you're working around them. Really interesting topic for me, and something that I didn't cover off with Matt on the previous call, but we get a lot of inquiries about, with the service that we provide, about, hey, I'm a college-bound student athlete. I think I'm pretty good. Do you reckon I could get a full ride? Okay. So we're going to cover what happens. Do they actually exist, and what does it take to get close to, if not a full ride? And definitely one of the topics that I have to broach with clients is around, the different divisions. And there are certainly some truths and myths about the different divisions, and maybe we're going to clarify some of those truths and myths around the NCAA Division 2 level. But a lot to cover. We've got an hour of your time, Coach. So again, very, very excited to have Coach Bryce Cooper on board from Newberry College, the head coach of Newberry College in South Carolina, in, again, the very competitive SAC. We'll go through that in a minute. I'm going to run off some stats, and then we're going to get into you, Coach. All about you. We're going to figure out who. Yeah, we're going to uncover some and worms there. All right, but did some research yesterday, and we went over the SAC, the South Atlantic Conference. I'm going to pull out some stats, and otherwise I'm going to talk about the conference that you play in, some of the heavy hitters in the conference, where you guys have competed against some of those teams, and where you see in the upcoming season, obviously with all the dynamics happening around the world, whether that happens or not, I'm not sure, but a little bit more about some of the teams in the conference that you compete against. And then we're going to go into your background. I'm going to let you uncover a little bit about yourself. But South Atlantic Conference, if I look at, and this is a resource that I task a lot of our college-bound student athletes, our clients, to engage in, whether coaches feel like it's a resource that has any weight or otherwise. But I look at the Bennett ranking a lot, as opposed to the NCAA rankings and the RPI. I think they're both pretty relevant, and they're both unique unto themselves, and they take in different factors. So if I look at the conferences right across the US, and a lot of kids don't realise just how many conferences there are, but in two alone, you're looking at 24 conferences. And if you look at the SAC and the Bennett ranking, the SAC is the second ranked conference of 24 conferences. So we start talking about the level of competition is extremely high in the SAC. So when we cover off some of these topics around your recruiting situations, and definitely some of the limitations that you face, we'll cover off obviously why that's the case. And certainly I'd say that has something to do with just how strong the conference is and how competitive and aggressive the recruiting cycles are for a lot of the teams that you play against. But if we look at the table in the SAC, I took this from the SAC website, and this was from 2019, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I saw some differentiators in rankings for 2019, so for last year. But we had Queens was number 1. We had Carson Newman number 2, Wingate 3, Tusculum 4, and Anderson in the top 5, and you were on equal points with Coca. It's again, going back to the fact that you're playing in a very, very tough conference. Some of these teams, how do you see them as, competitors? What is it that you see from these teams in terms of the competition, and who are the standout teams that you need to play against year upon year, or is it just something that, from top to toe, it's a grind? You want to give us some of your thoughts and feedback about the SAC?
We tell every recruit or family that we come in contact with that how competitive a conference it is, and anyone that does any kind of research quickly, like yourself, can kind of see that, where the past 2 years it's been either second or third in all conferences across the entire country. So it speaks to the level, it speaks to the parity, it speaks to the depth. We finished 7th, and had we won our last 2 regular season games, we would have actually won the regular season championship. So it was that close down to the last week. Typical teams that are a little bit more well-known probably, or have a bit more history and a bit more success are your Wingates of the world, who have won a national championship in the last 5 years. Queens has become a very, very solid top 25 program. And then Carson Newman the last 4 years since Stevens gotten there, the head coach. And then Tusculum perennially over the last decade has been a very strong team. So those 4 teams are kind of the bread and butter of the league. And, we were a program 5 years ago that didn't win a single game in conference before taking over. And we're very proud of the fact that now we were 5-5 this year. To some, that doesn't sound like really much, but when you go from no points to 15 points in a span of 4 years, you can see the trajectory of kind of where we're trying to take it. And we're up against, obviously, some of the best teams in the country. So we kind of equate it to, it's the ACC of Division II, the Atlantic Coast Conference of Division II, because it is so strong. The facilities are good, the resources are good, and we have teams vying for national championships, not just conference and regional championships. We're talking about national championships. Queens and Wingate both made good runs last year into the tournament, into the national tournament. So we are up against it by every stretch, but we know where we'd like to go, and our goal is to win a regular season conference championship.
Yeah, because if you look at 2019, it was 9-8 overall. You played up. This was a pretty impressive win, and I know the Wingate guys at a high level pretty well, and a win at number 12 Wingate. That was a big win for you, but it's interesting to see that there's momentum, right? So when you start talking about, you go back a few years, it was a little bit of a slow grind. You probably had, as you jumped on board as a head coach, players that you inherited, players that probably came from the old firm that, hadn't been given the opportunity to maybe grow and develop. But for me, and I always say this to our clients, the programs that you might encounter today won't be the programs that you might be joining, in the future, or even competing against in the future. There's so much dynamics, and I always say that even for me in the recruiting cycle, when I deal with coaches like yourself, I need to check back in almost quarterly what's happening, you know, and it's interesting that you say that. But I mean, it was a fantastic season, Coach. Congratulations, great season. And it speaks volumes of the things that you've implemented there. We'll get into a few of those things in a minute, but basically, I want to find out a little bit more about you. Okay, so from my perspective, I know what your background is, and maybe you can give me and the viewers a little bit more of an in-depth overview of who you are. I think it's good because if we uncover this, and I ask all of our coaches who come on board to the live chats, and I will plan to do that on a regular occurrence. It's interesting to see who you are and your achievements and where that began, right? So tell us a little bit more about a younger Bryce. What drew you to what we call football, you call soccer, but what drew you to the wonderful round game, and talk us through some of the, this really interesting trajectory that you had, especially, and again, we thank you for your service, but you served in the Army National Guard as a first lieutenant, which is amazing, right? But we'll get to that. First, I'll let you kick off and you give us a little bit of clarity about a younger Bryce and how you ended up where you're at, and a little bit about that journey where you kind of jumped into different roles with different soccer programs over the years. So I'll let you kick off and give us give our viewers a bit of history.
I think it's always interesting to see when we all kind of initially found the game, and I don't know about yourself, John, but I can remember how I kind of got led into the beautiful game. Is I had a neighbor from Costa Rica that I just always saw juggling and playing and in his yard and stuff with his father. So I grew up in a state called Indiana, which is kind of in the middle, literally, of the United States. And here's this, 8-year-old kid or whatever, my neighbor, just playing, and I'm like, kind of interested. So I start playing with him, and then that leads to playing, year-round and competitively, and it just kind of takes off from there. And was fortunate enough to play in some good environments in terms of club and youth, and then got recruited to play at a Division II school, ironically enough, in Indiana called Southern Indiana. It's right on the Kentucky-Indiana border, basically. I did a victory lap, as they say, so I had 5 years there, and grades got better as time went along, but it took me a little bit of time, truth be told, to figure that out. And then I had done ROTC, which for international, basically what that is it's a program at colleges where you can do military training and take military theory classes and different things to then join whichever service you want, whichever branch, whether that's Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Marines, etc. And so I did National Guard when I graduated because I wanted to serve but still wanted to sort of be a citizen and not be full-time. And so was still coaching club and doing that. Then in 2005, we got deployed to Iraq, so did a deployment for there, got back, and still was coaching high school and club and ODP and some other things, and just kind of head was spinning at that point because so many things going on. And then a local college called Butler University in Indianapolis, Division I school there. The head coach, I had worked there at camps, and he asked me to come on board on staff as kind of a volunteer. Ended up doing 3 years there and got promoted to be a full-time assistant. And then an opportunity in Pennsylvania came open. I had grown up in Indiana my entire life, so it was kind of one of those where, and you've had opportunities like this where you kind of want to go a new challenge, test yourself, meet new people, new culture, new everything. So went to Pennsylvania at a Division I school called St. Francis. And there's two St. Francis's, so some people get confused. There's one in New York and there's one in Pennsylvania. And
That's right.
I think they're called St. Francis Brooklyn now. But so coached there with a great coach who's now at Georgetown called Michael Casper. Learned a ton, and then went to Duquesne University, which is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for 3 years as the top assistant there under Chase Brooks, who's still there. And then, wanted some warmer weather maybe, wanted a head coaching opportunity. And so here we are 4 years later at Newberry, back in Division II, and a great family dynamic, great conference, as you mentioned, and facilities are getting better and better. Excuse me. So I've kind of always been at smaller private schools. I don't know why that's kind of worked itself out. But I like the fact that in those, they're kind of more personal, a little bit more of a family element in those, and the academics are pretty good. So, yeah, that's where we're at. And along the way have, gotten different coaching badges and licensing, and tried to always grow as a coach and as a leader, and still enjoying it to this day. And then I help out at a USL 2 team in the summer here in Columbia, South Carolina, called the Bantams, and have been enjoying that. And so, yeah, just it's been an interesting journey, very unique, to say the least. So,
Yeah. Well, and I've always had this kind of attraction to this thought process that, you serve in the army, and again, in Iraq, and, you come back and you think about, we're going through some interesting times in the world today, right? So you think about what you may have seen there, how that kind of experience could have been a very, very humbling experience without doubt. And then those dynamics, and how you implement them, I guess, all the way through the way that you engage young human beings, young individuals who are thinking about going into the college ranks and playing in competitive environments. It's a very, very interesting background that you had. You know what I mean? And I'll probably say that there's probably other coaches in our network that probably had some similar trajectories, but I think the interesting thing there is that, I always tell all of our clients, discipline, hard work, focus, and that's going to allow you to compete in very competitive settings, whether that be in a competitive soccer program in the college environment in the US, or, whether it be in a competitive work environment, where it can be cutthroat. So again, very, very interesting background. The funny thing about it as well is a lot of kind of kids get confused, right? So they think, there's Division 1, there's Division 2, there's Division 3, the NCAA, and that's not even including the NAIA and then NJCAA, which is junior college and 2-year institutions in that realm. But, I think that your journey is telling, because you had the experience as a D1 coach, and then you transition what you learned at that level and implemented it into the D2 environment at a very, very competitive level in the SAC. So do you see a lot of that crossover where you've learned a ton at a D1 level, and maybe you can give some clarity about what that environment typically entails in Division 1, what you extracted from that, and how you implemented it into your current program at Newberry, but then maybe that will probably lead into the question of, how you're currently recruiting, some of those limitations, and how you're working around them as well. So maybe we can cover that off.
Yeah, so great question. I think what I took away from some of the big, I guess, pillars that I took away from Division 1 were how to be organized, how to be, how to kind of have certain principles and values that are uncompromising, how to kind of have a little bit of tunnel vision in the sense of when you have goals and objectives, how do we get to those, and then how do we kind of gather the resources to then implement those. Division two, so that has helped me invaluably. All those things, because I feel like how you treat your program or how you run your program is kind of indicative of how you run your life. And I don't feel like there's a switch per se that you can just turn on and off. I feel like if you are organized in your life and you're disciplined and you're committed and those kind of things, and you have good habits, those should transition over to your coaching and your program, and we feel pretty good about that. Where you have to have some flexibility and some autonomy is Division II's got a little bit more of that work-life balance that they like to kind of promote. In essence, the slogan is "I choose Division II," and so there is a little bit more of that. Where I've had to kind of change or adapt is, it's not that athletics aren't important by any stretch, but there's a bit more understanding with you can have some other things that you're into as a student athlete. You can have a bit more of a balance. You can be involved in various clubs on campus, things like that. Whereas Division I, it was kind of the mindset of you're a student and an athlete, and that's probably where it stops. There's not really a lot of room beyond that, depending on what school you're at. But so that's kind of been our approach. And then in recruiting, maybe minus COVID-19, and we'll maybe talk about that in a minute. But minus that, we've tried to just cast as big a net as possible, because when you're inheriting a program that has really struggled and not had the best perception, in order to change that, you have to bring in a certain type of student athlete that has a hunger and a desire to help you change that. Because that's not for everybody. Yeah. Some student athletes, some players don't want to be a part of that. They want to go to a Wingate. They're fantastic. So I'm using that as a good example. They want to go to a Wingate, or maybe even Queens, where they have the best of everything, and they've already been there, done that. They've had All-Americans. They've won conference championships and national championships. We're literally building this from the ground up, brick by brick. So it takes a special person to buy into that and say, I want to help you do that. And so we've really been after players that are hungry to help us change that. And I give a lot of credit to the group that came in 2 or 3 years ago that has really turned it for us, and now getting us to a point where we can start to even take it up a notch from there. So we've cast an extremely big net. We've been overseas to showcases. We've been at a lot of things domestically in the region, whether it's Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, etc. And we're just looking for players that are hungry to help us change it, that are obviously high character people, like the kind of clients that you typically go after. And we've been you're never perfect, but we've been fairly successful so far with that.
Yeah, okay. And it's interesting to say that, because when you've talked about your recent travels over the last 24 months or so, and prior to that, into different markets like Europe, South America, or what I guess across those regions, I'm seeing a very strong trend. It probably wasn't prevalent 10 years ago, but it has been, and I can see it very directly in the recruiting cycle and amongst coaches, that, and this is probably talking to the point that in my journeys right across the world, recruiting kids, I've spent time in elite clubs, and I've sat down with education managers and whatnot at those elite clubs in different parts of England and different parts of Europe and otherwise. And it's interesting that they say that we know for a fact that our kids might start with us as 6, 7-year-olds come through that whole academy process. If they survive it, that's never a guarantee that you're going to get a pro contract. So what we do is we send them through into the collegiate market, and it's become a lot more prevalent that that kind of quality is entering into the market and probably proliferating into conferences like the SAC. I see it right across the board. I see programs that 10 years ago I may have come across, they may have connected with me. I may have researched them to find that they're not really that competitive, who are now very close to, if not on the national stage, and that talks to the dynamics around you as a coach, but also the recruiting processes that you go through, and just how much the international market has flourished and grown, and how there's synergies now. There's a lot of coaches find that to come to Australia, that's a trip. That's 24 hours. But to go to Europe, that's, a quarter of the time. Especially say you're on the East Coast, to get out to Europe, or from New York to get to London, whatever it might be, that's a short trip. So maybe if you talk about that, that's a very competitive, basically becoming more and more competitive from a recruiting perspective, not only for me as a third-party recruiter, but I can only imagine for yourself as a coach. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When I was a player, I'm going to sound old here. I'm going to turn 40 this year, John. So you can.
I'm one up above you. So
give me some tips later. When I was a player, there was a few internationals that I came across. Both on the program I played for and then against opponents, but very few. And so fast forward, 15 years or whatever, and the landscape's completely different. There are rosters that we come against that are 80% international. We're about almost 50-50, maybe 60-40 U.S. Versus international. It has completely changed in a good way, though. It's brought about, I feel like, a little bit better quality. It's brought about maybe a little bit savvier of a player, maybe a player with a better pedigree or experience, who has professional aspirations as well. And like you said, it's integrated from Division I all the way down to NAIA and junior colleges. In fact, we do a lot of recruiting at the 2-year schools because we feel like that's a way for us to get a little bit older and wiser quicker, if that makes sense.
I like that. No, absolutely. And I'll just stop you there for a second, Coach. Apologies, but it's such a... Look, you know what? If I go back in time and when we started off U90, almost close to 100% of our clients, because we were sourcing them from, whether it be in Australia predominantly, but then in international school markets across different parts of Asia and whatnot. When I journeyed out there, most of those kids, were kind of that very, because of private preparatory type schools, and they were very, very, very good students. Probably needed a lot more work athletically. I knew of and interacted with third parties locally who were very, very predominant around, okay, well, we're just going to get any type of kid and we're going to just send them over in the easiest and quickest roads in the JUCO market. So at least in Australia, it was a little bit tarnished in terms of what that pathway actually meant. But when we differentiated, for myself as a business owner and being able to create, a vibe around who U90 really is, over the last 5 years, we've had kids who were basically kids who dropped out of high school, kids who probably missed the boat in terms of their academics and their grades, but were great footballers. And it's an interesting dynamic where some of those kids actually came from very elite environments here locally. Great examples for us recently have been guys like goal has always been the academic aspect of it, because I know that football's fickle. But for elite players, they actually have this amazing opportunity to be able to step into an environment in the junior college ranks. But if they're managed correctly, one of the keys for me is I manage a kid all the way through 4 years, right, from word to go. And in between that, throughout that interaction, we're always kind of looking at different angles and different ways to approach it, right? Obviously there's a premium that's involved with that and that kind of service, but I see that we had a lot of success rate. We had, 2 or 3 guys who have just graduated from 4-year universities who ended up in nationally ranked junior colleges, transitioned over, whether it be after 2 years into Division 1 or whether they're after their first year into Division 2, just like Juro has done recently when he's joined, obviously made a commitment to University of Charleston, West Virginia in Division 2. But it's telling that you say that, and a lot of kids just don't realise when I say it's a lower cost entry point, especially for those families who can't typically afford a 4-year institution for that. But it also provides a very, very strong platform to be able to grow and develop and evolve, because if you went down this process and this pathway of entering into a 4-year straight away, that's no guarantee your freshman year that you're playing, because you have older senior players who are above you, and a lot of kids have to, and parents, funnily enough, have to internalise that the junior college route, if you're not ready yet, whether it be academically or whether it be athletically, is actually a very, very strong platform, if you manage right, to end up at a program like Newberry. So maybe you want to touch on that a little bit.
We've brought in 7 junior college players within the last 2 years, and they've all been great additions in different ways. But it is a great pathway because, like you said, you might save from a financial standpoint. It could save the family, a lot of money. It could basically. From a soccer playing standpoint too, there's a nice transitional piece, because just understanding kind of the level, the environments, the expectations, the demands, the consolidated seasons, all of those things are new, and you get 2 years, and a lot of the better ones go to very good junior college programs. You get your credits. Maybe if you weren't the best student, it gives you an opportunity to be able to focus on your academic piece a bit, to get your grades up, to prepare you for that next step, and you haven't gone into any kind of debt to do so. You've gotten to play, hopefully, at a good level, because there are some very good junior college programs. There are some that there's a little bit more of a gap, if we're honest about it, but there are some very good ones. And then you're ready from day one a lot of times, instead of maybe that typical 18-year-old international who might take 6 months to make that transition when he's going Division 2 or Division 1, versus a incoming junior from a junior college that's played at a good program, like, I'll just name one, Cowley or Tyler, or we could go down the list, Barton, who have all done very well and sent players on to a lot of colleges. So for us, and I know there's a lot of other colleges out there, we want a balance. We want those guys that have played at a good two-year university, a two-year school, who are ready to then transition right away and bring all the value that comes with that, as well as some of those younger players that can then come in and develop a bit. But yeah, it's been a great resource for us. When I was down in Texas in late November, for the junior college Division I national championships, not only was the level good, but you talk about attended by the who's who's. There was Division I schools from elite conferences all the way down to NAIA schools there. Very well representation of all levels, and all environments. So I think it's a great route for the right student athlete. That maybe needs that critical time, whether it's a year or 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you're saying that you're taking a lot of time to be able to recruit. Recruit players from that environment, because I've seen just how powerful it is for these kids to start potentially at a junior college level and then transition into programs like yourself, just in terms of their age, their maturity, their athleticism, because they've come up and being prepared in the US-centric style of training, which is always very physical, very, very athletic based. Because I see that transition. We try to do that with a lot of our clients. Say, hey, listen, take the time to make sure that if you've got a year before you enter a 4-year, that you are ready to go. That's not always a guarantee, but if you need that time, junior college route is definitely a strong environment.
The reality is, not to cut you off, but the reality is if we're being really transparent, most coaches, if they invest a significant scholarship in an international player, they want a rate on that return pretty quickly, and that's sort of the business side, if you will, just like in any business. So you hit a nail on the head. If a player is truly ready from day one, fantastic if they're coming straight over without going to a 2-year school. But the 2-year school players, it's giving them time, like you said, and then now when that scholarship is offered and given, you feel a little bit maybe just more comfortable about getting a quicker return on that. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and I see that. Here's a really interesting one. It might be transparent in the SAC and the South Atlantic Conference where you guys play. And again, if we go back to the Bennett ranking, number 2 out of about 24 different conferences scattered right across the US. Now, the interesting thing about that Bennett ranking was number 1 conference is the SSC, right? At least that's where they, that Florida kind of region. Yeah, and you think about it, every single, because I have clients myself, they say, hey, you know what, I want to go to Florida. I go, you know what, it's a very, very narrow door to enter, because when I talk to, if I can send 20 emails to Mac, for example, right, I can send, great coach, all these emails to all the different schools, whether it be Barry, wherever it might be, within that, all those guys, right? And every single one will say exactly the same thing. John, we only take either 2-year transfers, 4-year transfers, or 2-year, or 1 or 2-year transfers from the junior college route. And that's telling of why your kind of conferences are so very strong, right? Because the quality of the player, their tenure in the junior college ranks, or the fact that you have a few kids that drop off from Division 1, they're not getting that much playing time, really, really good quality players, but then end up in Division 2 as well. So there's all these little kind of nuances and pathways to be able to enter into highly competitive conferences and teams like Newberry, for example, right? So it's interesting that we've covered that off. We've got about 18 minutes left before Instagram will probably shut us off. So let's cover off some of these. Other questions. So one of the consistent questions that I get from clients before they jump on board here with us at Upper 90 is, hey, look, what's the deal? What is truly the deal? What's the dollar figure that I'll be able to get, right? And there are so many nuances that go into a recruiting cycle that a lot of kids don't understand. Like, if they're paying a third party like myself, I have to weave through so many different bits and pieces of information, understanding you as a coach, understanding what your conference level is, understanding the nature of the conference and the competition that you play against, understanding what your recruiting cycle is, right? Because you can turn around and say, John, all I want is a goalkeeper, centre back, and that's it. That's all I need for the next year, right? So there's all these little nuances that a lot of clients don't understand before they ask me to invest time and energy to engage coaches like myself, right? But then with that comes the question, well, you know what, I played, for example, here in Australia at a Premier League level. For you as a coach, you try to uncover, okay, well, I'm not sure what that level is, so I need to see what this recruit, how he plays at that level of competition and the level of competition that he plays against. And you have to analyse their film and otherwise that we provide to you. And then these kids turn around and their parents might say, hey, listen, can we get close to it if not a full ride? And I always say, you know what, there's a little bit of a learning curve for them to understand what that means. And I also say all the time, without fail, I say, listen, if we present you back to a 4-year university or even a top-tier junior college, and you want a full ride or you have the capability to get that and you receive that, one, that's a blessing because you might have another 20-plus players on your roster who are paying full tuition to go to that particular school. And if you do get that full ride, I always say that's a bullet to your temple. Because now, what you were talking about prior in being a return on investment for a program, you better be a return on investment because Bryce Cooper has a boss above him called the athletic director. That boss says, hey, this is your money, this is your budget for this year, this is what you're going to have to spend to recruit those players. And if you recruit that player and that player's not performing, I'm going to knock on your door. I'm going to have a question about where you spend that money and what you spend on that particular player. So do you want to cover off maybe the truths and myths about full ride and what kind of caliber of athlete can actually attain that and maybe some of the nuances around that?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. I'm glad you're kind of bringing that up because there's a lot of myths. There's a lot of misinformation, I think. First of all, athletic aid or scholarships, if you will, are 1-year contracts. I'm just moving here quickly because the connection's like a little. So those are 1-year contracts. So a lot of players feel like, well, I better get a 90% scholarship right away, or oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, a lot of players in a lot of programs, including ours, may come in on X percentage, but if they come in and perform and do well in the classroom and on the field, we're going to increase that and reward them because we feel like that's the right thing to do, just as in the real world. If you go into your boss and getting a good evaluation and asking for a raise after a few years because of your performance, he or she should give it to you. So we do that. Also, there's a limit of scholarships on Division I, Division II, and then Division III has academics. So for Division I, it's 9.9 is the equivalency max for men's soccer. At Division II, it's 9. So we're not far off, but what the misunderstanding is, that doesn't mean every school gets 9. There are...
Yeah. We lost you there, Coach. Wait till you get back on. Instagram Live people. We just lost the connection with Coach. I think it's his connection's got a little bit choppy. But we've been on.
Fully funded.
Oh, there you are. We've got you back.
And
there you are.
9 scholarship. Cool. There are schools in Division II that are fully funded at 9 scholarships, and there are some that are at 4. Or less. In Newberry, we have, I have a good amount, so we have to be careful on how we use that, like you said, because the boss, the AD, wants you to make sure you're using that wisely, and certainly, making good choices with that. And so you might carry a roster of 30 plus players and you have 8 scholarships, to make that work. So it's,
yeah, we've probably lost Coach again. It's buffering again. But how's everyone going out there in U90 land or across Instagram? Sorry about a little bit of that choppy connection. I'll wait for Coach to jump back on. But guys, when Coach does jump back on, with Coach, that we can get him to answer. Let's try to cook out some questions for Coach. We'll try to get him back on. So I'll just send him another. We'll just say there he is. We got it.
Okay. So anyway, sorry.
We're talking about scholarship guys on Instagram. People who have joined us or people who are just checking in. Coach Bryce Cooper from Newberry College. We've covered so much ground. We'll be posting a lot of this content across all of our social media channels. But Coach is just going through the truths and myths about a full ride. But go ahead, Coach.
Sorry. So essentially, like I was saying, you're given a certain amount of scholarships for your program, and you have to figure out the puzzle on who gets what and how you reward what. And, a lot of coaches reward certain positions or certain backgrounds and needs. It's really, a lot of it's about needs. It's needs-based, like you alluded to earlier. What positions are you looking for that particular cycle? And so then you have to decide how much scholarship amount you have available and what works for that family. And so there's a lot of variables to it. Each school has to have a certain amount of players that are on non-scholarship. That's just kind of the way it is to kind of balance the scholarship opportunities or money that you're giving to other players. And so for us, typically we're able to offer pretty good packages. There's things called stacking that a lot of schools do. And as you so you're using academic scholarship combined with athletic scholarship, to get them to their total number, their total package. So we're a school that does that, and we feel like that's a good selling point. So if there's a student athlete that has good grades and has done well in the classroom, we can package that to make it very feasible for them and their families. And so, some schools don't have that ability. Some do. So there's a lot of variables that you have to look at when a player is interested in attending a certain school. And are they private? Are they public? Because that's going to determine some of the aid as well. But for international students, getting a full, quote-unquote, full scholarship is extremely rare. And honestly, most need to be able to pay something towards their education, because it does two things. If they pay something, it shows that they're bought in, that they're more invested, right? Versus getting everything for free. And two, it helps the coach, in theory, make a deeper roster. Because in theory, if I give out 5 full scholarships and I only have 6 to work with, well, we better not have any injuries the entire year. So, which, as you know, is not realistic. So most coaches really try to create a deep roster if they can, by doing that. Hey, can you pay X so that we can not only bring in yourself, but bring in another, big time number 10 or whatever it is. So, each school has a different number, and the max at Division II is 9. But stackable 8 certainly helps, and the better student you are normally helps.
Yeah, so that's a great coverage of this conception of what it takes to have a full ride. And again, thanks for everyone who just joined. Coach, very conscious of time, probably got at best maybe 10 minutes before Instagram kind of cuts us off. But this ties into our kind of last topic that we wanted to cover around the truths and myths about the NCAA Division 2 level as opposed to other divisions. One of my clients, a very talented young man and goalkeeper, very great student and athlete here in Australia, Nick Bold, he asked a question. I know we kind of covered it at the start of the session, but he asked a question to you, Coach, around what's the quality of football like in your conference? And maybe I'll probably add to that the style of football and the type of football. Is it technical or is it direct across all the different teams? And how has your team stacked up over the past few years in the conference? Maybe you want to cover that or recover that again.
Yeah, so as we talked about, we started off as kind of one of the lower teams in the conference, and have slowly over the last 4 years, kind of climbed that ladder per se, to where now we're in the middle of the table, if you want to think of it that way. And so now we're looking to make that jump to be in the top 2, top 3 is kind of our goal, and to compete for a regular season championship. In terms of style, I'll speak for us quickly, and then maybe just for the league as a whole to some degree, because I don't want to speak for other coaches, but we try to play more of a possession-based, aesthetically pleasing style where the ball stays on the floor a good amount, and we try to overload certain pockets of space in the field and try to break lines. Is that to say that we're never going to skip out players and playing behind a back 4, back 3, whatever that is? No, of course not. But for the most part, and then we try to press a little bit higher to win the ball back in good areas. There are several teams in the conference that play similarly, but there are also a couple that play a bit more direct and have a bit more size to them, and maybe rely on set pieces a bit more, maybe a little bit more that grittiness, and break things up and try to counter. So I would say for the most part, a lot of the conference tries to play because the level is quite good, and the quality of player is high. So a lot of balls to feed, a lot of creativity, a lot of 3, 4, 5-man sequences. But there are some teams, of course, that maybe play to a different style and different strength.
Awesome. Look, it's interesting that you say that, because there's a lot of kids just don't understand it, right? They don't understand what the level is at Division 2 or otherwise, and sometimes they get worried because in the past, I go back 10 years, and if I've been running the company for that long, a lot of people were understood that the collegiate game was played in a very direct manner, very physical, focused on the athlete rather than the skill sets and technical kind of aspects. So it's interesting to see that the SAC has those nuances, right? So, and obviously you can recruit kids specifically for that. And again, go back to what we just covered previously in the last question. The last topic that we were talking about was that when you recruit, you're recruiting for very specific traits in in a collegiate athlete or a prospect that's entering into the US collegiate system. And even from my perspective, my role is to navigate and weed through all those different factors to find the right fit for, your very specific requirements. So it's interesting that you covered off that topic. I'm very, very conscious of time. We've probably got a minute or two left, but you know what? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to wrap this up by thanking Coach Bryce Cooper, the head coach of Newberry College in the extremely competitive South Atlantic Conference, SAC Conference in NCAA Division 2 for joining us this morning live and direct on the College Insider Live. Coach, you were our second guest, uncovered so much content. Really, really, really grateful for having you on board, and I'm sure that you've left us a whole bunch of golden nuggets for every single one of our prospects, our current recruits, their families, but more importantly for all these kids who are really thinking about entering into the college environment. Can't thank you enough. One and all, thank you for joining us today. This content will be downloaded and we're going to distribute it right across our social media networks, so the full content. We'll be taking little snippets as well and putting it onto our Instagram feed. Some pearls of wisdom from Coach from this chat. And ladies and gentlemen, Coach Bryce Cooper, if I could have one of those round of applause machines in the back, I'm going to give you a round of applause.
Thank you
so much for joining. Amazing insight. Thanks again, Coach. And you have a great day. Love to the family. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Love you guys. Take care.
Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks again, man.
Be in touch.